Good visual composition is essential to good visual communication. Every time you look through the camcorder viewfinder, you should try to compose the best scene possible. Think before you shoot. Ask yourself, what am I trying to emphasize? If you weren't born with an eye for composition, here are a few rules that'll help. Don't always center your subject. It's boring. The rule of thirds says that the eye tends to gravitate to a point 1/3 of the way from the left and right side of the screen and 1/3 from the top and bottom. By placing your subject at these intersections, they'll be at the strongest visual area of the screen. If your subjects are people, give them looking room. Imagine the screen as having visual weight. If the subject is looking right, decide how much looking room is needed to balance the picture. The same rule applies if it's a two-shot. Again, the rule of thirds can help.
Hey, go ahead.
If your subject is moving, allow more room. The viewer wants to know where your subject is going, not where it's been. Foreground detail can add dimension and depth to a scene. Background should be relevant, not distracting. Be especially careful of poles, trees, fences, etc. Good composition also depends on a willingness to bend in two areas, the mind and the knees. Think about and look at all of the possible angles on your subject before you shoot. These are just some of the rules of good composition. Now set the rules aside and go experiment. As you look into the viewfinder, ask yourself, is this important to what I'm shooting, and is it composed nicely? If the answer is yes, push the button. With today's home video tip, I'm Jerry Hattan, Channel 2 News.
It seems to be more uphills than downhills.
Now, I didn't stop to realize while shooting that these are lines, forms, color, and texture, etc. But if you can train your eye to see these things and look for these things, then instinctively your composition will improve. Then your photography will have more impact and meaning in terms of composition. The story is we're going to Alaska. It's a distance, it's the journey, and I wanted my shots to help set up that feeling. Clear, crisp, and concise. The scene can be swallowed in one gulp. Again, we're writing with our camera, and the best writing is simple writing. It's cluttered, it's busy. What is the viewer supposed to look at? The post, the construction in the middle, the patio, the porta potty? Your eye goes to the bright areas of the screen. There's just no real center of interest. Find the angles that kiss. And again, keep it simple, sweetie. Delete the unnecessary stuff. Move your body around. Find the angle. Here, the viewer needn't look twice to understand the shot. Strong design elements. Something to guide the eye. A strong graphic, geometric, or visual pattern. S-curves and diagonals are very powerful design elements. Balance and symmetry are also very important elements in composition, and this can be based on many things. Everything in the frame has weight. In terms of visual weight, if both objects are equal, that's formal balance. Informal is usually more pleasing. This is where the primary form is offset by the secondary form. People, offset by other elements instead of centered and/or a black hole behind them. Inanimate objects can have visual weight also. There are lots of ways to learn composition. I like to learn from the masters, and by doing that you study whatever you enjoy in art, be it painting, still photography, films, TV news, whatever. I always try to keep copies of some of the great masters lying around on the coffee table for inspiration, because the classics are great teachers. They can teach you to see things and shoot things like you never have before, but I don't always believe everything I read. Sometimes I have a little bit of doubt and I have to see it to believe it, or maybe I have to see it to learn how to see. In that instance, I tune to commercials, watch a little local TV news, or maybe even Hollywood.
Okay, now you...
But Caroline, I mean, I don't know anything about guns. I mean, I never even carried none.
Lord, what kind of upbringing did them Injuns give you? Never carried no gun. Why, a man ain't complete without a gun. Go snake-eyed.
Do what?
Like this. Like this. All right. Now, draw and shoot that bottle before you touch the gun.
Now, Caroline, how can I draw and shoot the gun before I touch it?
Concentration. Try it. Hot damn! Yeah.
Caroline was right. It is possible to shoot a gun before you touch it. Of course, it takes lightning reflexes and considerable snake-eyed concentration.
Under normal circumstances, placing your subject at the intersections will yield more interesting pictures. Using the horizontal lines of the same rule, try to remember more sky, less sky. Don't always put your subject in the center of the screen. Half of the screen is unused. You're not emphasizing anything in the frame. Give the viewer a clue. More sky. And it doesn't have to be true horizon lines. Most scenes will benefit from sky, less sky. Every subject within the screen, whether human or not, has a certain visual energy which should be compensated for. In other words, weight. Allow screen space for their implied or real movement. Use the verticals for looking room. Use the strongest area of the screen, the rule of thirds. That's an okay shot, but there's no visual weight given for the looking room. Why not open up the shot and give her some looking room, let us see what she's looking at? The same with inanimate objects. Give the soccer ball looking room, and more sky, less sky, and you've got it. Now it has a little visual, and you're starting to communicate a bit more with your pictures. Again, instead of point and shoot, getting in some target practice, give it some life.
Well, whatever plan lawmakers finally adopt, it will likely push some tiny school districts into a no-win financial corner. Tonight, Charles Hadlock has a case in point from Wheeler County in the Texas Panhandle, where the tax base is big, but the schools are small.
To lawmakers in Austin, this is the sound of money. But in the Panhandle Plains, wealth is elusive and often measured in different terms. Tiny towns are dying all over Wheeler County. The town of Ziebach disappeared long ago. Its two-room schoolhouse is all that's left to mark the passing of time. When the last lesson was finished here, the town was not far behind. Small-town schools help hold together the fabric of West Texas. That's why the Wheeler County town of Kelton is fighting to keep its school open. The school is the biggest building in town. In fact, it's about the only building in town. Lawmakers in Austin say Kelton has one of the richest school districts in Texas. But try telling that to the people who live here, where the only sign of commerce is a soft drink machine. Lawmakers may consider the school district rich, but it's not fancy. There's no choir, no swimming pool, no football team. There are not enough students to make a squad. Kelton has only 7 seniors and 4 juniors. The entire junior high class can fit in one room.
The fourth period right here in the Texas history have 11. That's our biggest class of the day.
Some classes are much smaller.
Why don't you read for a little bit and then I'll read to you.
Kelton offers the ultimate in student-teacher ratios.
Now this is my smallest class, but my largest class is 7.
Kelton surpasses all the educational requirements mandated by the state. No student has ever failed an exit test. Yet Kelton receives absolutely no state money. The Kelton School District sits on a huge oil and gas field. Lawmakers want Kelton to share the wealth.
If we don't take their money, they shouldn't take ours. To me, that's socialism.
Anyone that's downstate that feels like they're not getting equal treatment, we'd welcome them here. to come up here and come to our school and be part of our district. And they'd get the equality they want without us having to send it down there to them.
The superintendent says Kelton would have to close or consolidate if it were forced to give up its tax base. The school is too small, he says, to run on anything less.
Reeks a little bit of communism.
Bill Wheeler taught school here in the 50s.
And then we hit oil here, and all of a sudden we want to send our money everywhere else. Nobody came and helped us, and we was poor.
See, there's a little rounded part.
Oh, yeah.
Students of the 8th grade art class, all 3 of them, draw the only neighboring building and wonder what school would be like outside Kelton.
It's just like family out here, you know? There's less people out here you have a better chance at being something.
And the town of Kelton, as small as it is, has a better chance of surviving with its school than without it.
Everything that's around here focuses here at the school. So when that's gone, Kelton's gone.
Charles Hadlock, 11 News, Wheeler County.
In the telephoto shot, there is some depth to the shot lines. They give it perspective. But notice the impact of the wider shot. It's much more pronounced. Foreground interest will make a big difference. Along with angle and perspective, the first 2 shots have depth, but the third is fairly flat. Why is that? It's no perspective or space given to the picture. There's no depth. And the first shots, the composition is key. It leads the viewers to the signs and the subject. Also, you can achieve depth in your interviews. Use the backlight and lose your depth of field. Moving behind the flag and letting the sun backlight it. Sometimes you may be asked to do the painting, starting with a blank canvas. Now, this wouldn't be appropriate in news, but both clients wanted this look, and you never know when you'll need certain skills. You may not think you have this luxury in news, or do you?
Found it. I didn't get that one.
They had the prisoners out today putting sandbags around the prison. They won't evacuate the prison unless the water goes 2 feet higher. And there is some good news to report out of Fort Bend County to the north of here.
Whenever I have the opportunity, I love to experiment with lighting. This live shot let me practice painting because I was done editing an hour before I live shot. I was bored and I'd been doing night lives for a few days and hardly ever saw high water behind the reporter, even though we always referenced it. Take advantage of your opportunities. Learn the skill before you need it. Remember how we talked about getting rid of distractions in the background during my Better Home videos? Do you know how painful those antlers are growing out of my head? And this was shot by a professional. This is why I say you need to think, look, and see, not just point and shoot. Again, what is the subject? Is there anything in the frame that's distracting to the viewer? Then get rid of it. Here we're rolling in more neutral density with filters, then using the shutter to cut down on the light, so the iris opens, therefore your depth of field drops. As compared to this, don't just look and shoot, think, see. Emotional content, usually high. With our cameras, we can emphasize these moments, perhaps making the viewer's connection clear, but be careful. You can't color much in news. But again, you're touching those equalizers in all of us. If it's a stressful situation, perhaps the composition is off balance, adding a feeling of stress to the scene.
Why don't you read for a little bit and then I'll read to you.
Rear foot! Another staple of the Army regimen, marching to cadence.
Well, Hernandez, get in step.
Footwork foreign to most, seemingly impossible to some.
Do not look at the ground.
In just 6 months of this year, Houston Technical Institute made well over $1 million on government-backed grants and loans. Many of the students are ex-cons, some of them hardcore career criminals. Houston Technical Institute gets thousands of dollars for each of them, pays them to attend, and then houses them in middle-class neighborhoods, leaving them here to open drug dens, loot, rape, maybe even kill.